The phone call came at 3:17 in the morning. I knew it was my lawyer before I even looked at the screen. Nobody calls with good news at that hour. My hand trembled as I answered, still half asleep, still believing my world was intact. "She did it," Marcus said without preamble. "Sarah sold your shares." The words hit me like ice water. I sat up in my hotel bed, the divorce papers scattered across the nightstand catching the glow from my phone. 3 months of legal warfare. 3 months of watching the woman I'd loved for 8 years transform into someone I didn't recognize. And now this. All of them? My voice came out as a whisper. Every single share she could get her hands on. 43% of Tech Vault Solutions. Sold to Meridian Holdings this afternoon. I closed my eyes. Tech Vault wasn't just my company. It was 15 years of my life. 15 years of 18-hour days, missed dinners, canceled vacations. I'd built it from nothing in our garage while Sarah worked her corporate job, supporting us both. She used to bring me coffee at midnight, kiss my forehead, tell me she believed in my crazy dream. That same woman had just tried to destroy me. "There's more," Marcus continued. His voice carried that careful tone lawyers use when they're about to shatter what's left of your world. "She's claiming you hid assets from her during the divorce proceedings. Says you undervalued the company deliberately." I laughed. The sound came out bitter and raw. Sarah didn't know the first thing about business valuations. She'd never sat through a board meeting, never reviewed a quarterly report. But she knew how to hurt me. She'd always known exactly where to aim the knife. "How is that even possible?" I asked. "She doesn't have power of attorney." "Joint ownership documents from when you got married. Remember? You put her name on everything back then." Of course. I remembered signing those papers in our lawyer's office, Sarah's hand in mine, both of us grinning like idiots. We were invincible then. We were forever. Forever lasted exactly 8 years. I hung up and stared at the ceiling of my sterile hotel room. This was supposed to be temporary, just until the divorce finalized, just until we could figure out how to divide a life we'd built together. I never imagined she'd go nuclear. But here's what Sarah didn't know. Here's what her expensive lawyers hadn't uncovered in all their digging through my financial records. 6 months ago, when I first suspected she was having an affair, when I found the credit card charges at restaurants I'd never been to and hotel rooms I'd never seen, I'd started preparing. Not for revenge, for survival. I'd quietly purchased another 37% of Tech Vault through a shell company I'd established years earlier for tax purposes, Bridgepoint Ventures. It had been sitting dormant, just another line item in a forgotten filing cabinet. But when I saw the writing on the wall, when I realized my marriage was crumbling, I'd activated it. Sarah had just sold 43% of my company to Meridian Holdings. I now owned 67% through Bridgepoint. She'd handed me complete control while thinking she was destroying me. The irony was so perfect it almost hurt to breathe. I called Marcus back. "We need to move fast," I said. "I want an emergency board meeting tomorrow." "What board meeting? Sarah just gutted your voting power." "Marcus, there's something I need to tell you about Bridgepoint Ventures." The silence on the other end stretched for nearly 10 seconds. "You magnificent bastard," he finally whispered. The Tech Vault boardroom had always been my sanctuary. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown. A mahogany table I'd picked out myself when we moved from the garage to our first real office. Today it felt different, colder, like a courtroom. 5 board members sat around that table. 4 of them had been with me since the beginning. The 5th was James Morrison, Meridian Holdings representative. He'd flown in from New York that morning, probably expecting to participate in my corporate funeral. Instead, he was about to witness my resurrection. "Gentlemen," I began, "thank you all for accommodating this emergency session." Morrison leaned back in his chair with the confidence of a man holding a royal flush. "I think we all know why we're here. Meridian Holdings now controls 43% of Tech Vault Solutions. That makes us the largest single shareholder." "Actually," I said, sliding a folder across the table, "that makes you the second largest shareholder." His confidence flickered, just for a moment, like a candle in a sudden breeze. Bridgepoint Ventures purchased an additional 37% of outstanding shares over the past 6 months. Combined with my original 20%, that gives us controlling interest. The room went silent. Morrison opened the folder with hands that weren't quite steady anymore. Inside were share certificates, transfer documents, notarized statements, all legitimate, all legal. all time-stamped months before Sarah's betrayal. This is impossible, Morrison said, but his voice lacked conviction. It's actually quite possible, and quite legal. Bridgepoint Ventures has been a registered entity for 5 years. We've simply been dormant until recently. What I didn't say was that Sarah's affair had saved my company. If she hadn't started sleeping with her yoga instructor, if I hadn't started preparing for the worst, Meridian would own TechVault right now. Her betrayal had become my salvation. Furthermore, I continued, I'm calling for an immediate vote to restructure our corporate bylaws, specifically to require unanimous board approval for any major acquisitions or partnerships. Morrison's face had gone pale. You can't do this. Actually, I can. I have controlling interest. The vote is a formality. One by one, my board members raised their hands. Morrison sat frozen, watching his corporate ambitions crumble in real time. Motion carries, I announced. Meridian Holdings is welcome to maintain their minority stake, of course, but they'll have no operational control. Morrison stood up so abruptly his chair toppled backward. This isn't over, he said. Yes, it is. He stormed out, leaving his expensive briefcase behind. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Sarah called that evening. I was back in the office, working late like old times. The building was empty except for security and the cleaning crew. My sanctuary felt like home again. You manipulative son of a bitch, she said without preamble. Hello, Sarah. How was your day? You knew what I was planning and you set me up. I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the city lights. I didn't know anything. I just prepared for the worst and hoped for the best. Prepared for the worst? You destroyed my financial settlement. The laugh that came out of me was hollow. Your financial settlement? Sarah, you tried to steal my company. The company I built while you were climbing the corporate ladder at someone else's firm. The company that paid for our house, our vacations, your car, your clothes, your entire lifestyle. It's half mine. I supported you in the beginning. You did, and I was grateful. But supporting someone and betraying them are very different things. Silence on the other end. I could almost see her in our old kitchen, the one she'd redecorated twice, pacing between the granite countertops I'd paid for. I know about David, I said quietly. Her breath caught. What? Your yoga instructor. 6 months, Sarah. Hotel rooms every Tuesday and Thursday. The receipts were very thorough. More silence. Then, in a voice so small I almost didn't recognize it, how long have you known? Long enough to protect myself. Not long enough to save us. She started crying then. The same tears she'd cried when I'd asked for the divorce. The same tears she'd cried when she'd begged me to give us another chance even as she was planning to destroy me. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered. Yes, you did. That's exactly what you wanted. You couldn't have me, so you decided to destroy what I love most. I love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of me. You love the lifestyle I provided. But you don't love me. People who love each other don't try to burn each other's lives to the ground. I hung up before she could respond. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of legal maneuvering. Sarah's lawyers tried everything. They claimed fraud, hidden assets, conspiracy. They filed injunction after injunction, each one more desperate than the last. But the paperwork was airtight. Bridgepoint Ventures was legitimate. The share purchases were legal. Every transaction had been properly documented and reported. Meanwhile, TechVault thrived. Without the uncertainty of a potential Meridian takeover, our stock price stabilized. Our clients stopped worrying about corporate restructuring. The team I'd built over 15 years could focus on what they did best: innovation. Morrison tried to salvage something from the wreckage. He offered to sell Meridian's shares back to me at cost, just to cut his losses. I declined. Let them sit on their 43%. Let them watch from the sidelines while I rebuilt what they tried to take. The divorce finalized on a gray Thursday in November. Sarah got the house, half our savings, and alimony for 3 years. Fair enough. I got my company, my freedom, and the knowledge that I'd survived the worst betrayal of my life. Marcus met me outside the courthouse. How does it feel to be officially divorced? He asked. I considered the question. How did it feel? Empty, mostly, relieved, sad for what we'd lost, angry at how we'd lost it. Like the end of a very long storm, I finally said. And TechVault? Stronger than ever. We're launching the new security platform next quarter. Government contracts are already lining up. Think Sarah regrets it? I looked up at the courthouse steps where I'd married Sarah 9 years ago. Different life, different man, different dreams. The guy who'd stood there in his rented tuxedo, promising forever, would never have imagined this moment. I think Sarah regrets getting caught. I don't think she regrets the choices that led to getting caught. That evening, I sat in my new apartment overlooking the river. Smaller than the house, but mine. Quiet, clean, no memories lurking in every corner. My phone buzzed with a text from David, my head of engineering. Stock price hit an all-time high today. Board meeting next week to discuss expansion into European markets. Thought you'd want to know. I smiled for the first time in months. Real smile, not the corporate mask I'd been wearing through meetings and depositions. Tech Vault was more than surviving. We were thriving. And I'd learned something valuable about myself in the process. I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. Strong enough to survive betrayal. Smart enough to plan for the worst. Stubborn enough to rebuild from the ashes. 6 months later, Sarah called again. I saw the news, she said. Tech Vault's going public? In the fall, Goldman Sachs is handling the IPO. That's amazing. I always knew you'd make it big. Did you? Because selling my shares to a corporate raider suggested otherwise. I was angry. I was hurt. I wasn't thinking clearly. No, you weren't. Can we talk? Maybe get coffee sometime? I was quiet for a long moment, watching the sunset through my office windows. The city spread out below like a circuit board, all lights and connections and infinite possibilities. Why? I asked. Because I miss you, because I made a mistake, because I want to fix this. There's nothing to fix, Sarah. You made your choice. I made mine. We both have to live with the consequences. But don't you miss what we had? What we had. 8 years of marriage, 3 houses, 2 miscarriages that nearly broke us both, vacations in Tuscany and long walks on Sunday mornings. Her laugh when she found something truly funny. The way she used to trace patterns on my chest when she couldn't sleep. Yes, I missed it. I missed it like a phantom limb. I miss who we used to be, I said finally. But that's not who we are anymore. People can change. Some people can. But trust, once broken, stays broken. I learned that lesson very thoroughly. She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. I'm sorry. For all of it. I know that doesn't matter now, but I needed you to know. It does matter, just not in the way you want it to. After I hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness and thought about forgiveness, about moving forward versus moving on, about the difference between healing and scarring over. Sarah's apology didn't change anything. It couldn't resurrect our marriage or erase her betrayal, but it was something, a small acknowledgement of the damage done, a recognition that actions have consequences. The Tech Vault IPO launched on a crisp October morning. I stood on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, watching the opening bell ceremony, surrounded by the team that had made it all possible. Our stock opened at $42 per share. By the end of the day, we'd closed at 58. My 20% stake, plus Bridgepoint's 37%, was worth more than I'd ever dreamed possible, more than Sarah and I had ever imagined during those early days in the garage. The irony wasn't lost on me. Her betrayal had forced me to consolidate control of my company. Her attempt to destroy me had made me richer than we'd ever been together. That night, I called my father. Saw the news, he said before I could speak. Your mother would have been proud. Mom had died 3 years earlier, right after Sarah and I had started having problems. Cancer, quick and brutal. She'd always liked Sarah, trusted her judgment, believed in our marriage even when I'd started having doubts. Think she would have approved of how I handled things? I asked. Your mother believed in justice. Not revenge, but justice. You protected what you built. You played by the rules even when Sarah didn't. Yeah, she would have approved. I feel like I should be happier about this. Success without someone to share it with is just expensive loneliness, he said. But lonely is better than betrayed. You'll find someone who deserves what you have to offer. Maybe, not ready yet. That's okay too. Healing takes time. A year later, I was debugging code in my office when my assistant knocked. There's someone here to see you, she said. Says it's about Bridgepoint Ventures. I looked up, curious. Bridgepoint had remained dormant since the Tech Vault acquisition, just another holding company in my portfolio. The man in my doorway was older, gray-haired, wearing an expensive suit that couldn't hide his nervous energy. Mr. Richardson, I'm Tom Bradley from Meridian Holdings. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. I remember you from the board meetings. Thought Morrison was handling our account. Morrison no longer works for Meridian. I'm his replacement. I see. What can I do for you? Bradley pulled out a folder, much thicker than the one Morrison had reviewed during our last encounter. We want to buy you out completely. Bridgepoint Ventures, Tech Vault, everything. Name your price. I almost laughed. Why would I sell? Tech Vault is performing beautifully. Because Meridian Holdings is about to be acquired by a much larger firm. They're interested in your technology stack. They're prepared to offer 10 times current market value. 10 times market value. I did the math in my head. The number was staggering. Who's the buyer? I asked. Can't reveal that yet, but they're serious. This offer expires in 48 hours. After Bradley left, I sat alone in my office, staring at the acquisition proposal. The numbers were almost incomprehensible. Enough money to retire 10 times over. Enough to fund any project, chase any dream, live any lifestyle. But Tech Vault wasn't just about money anymore. It was proof that I could survive anything. Proof that good work and smart planning could overcome betrayal and greed. I called Marcus. They're offering what? He said after I explained the situation. Is it legitimate? The financials check out. This isn't a scam. They really want your company. Should I take it? That depends. What do you want your life to look like? What did I want my life to look like? For 8 years, I'd wanted it to look like marriage and partnership and shared dreams. For the past year, I'd wanted it to look like survival and vindication. Now, I wasn't sure. I need to think about it. That evening, I drove to the cemetery where my mother was buried. I hadn't been there since the funeral, couldn't bear the reality of it. But tonight felt different. Tonight, I needed her counsel. The headstone was simple granite, just her name and dates. No flowery epitaphs or religious quotes. Mom had never been one for unnecessary words. I don't know what to do, I said to the empty air. I built something incredible, but I built it for the wrong reasons. I saved it out of spite. I've proven I can survive, but what's the point of surviving if you're not really living? The wind rustled the oak trees overhead. Somewhere in the distance, traffic hummed along the highway. Life continuing, indifferent to my crisis. Sarah called again last week, I continued. She's dating someone new, some lawyer from her firm, says she's happy. Maybe she is. Maybe that's justice too. I sat on the bench facing her grave and watched the sun set through the trees. Mom had always said that success meant different things to different people. For some, it was money. For others, recognition. For her, it had been raising children who could think for themselves and treat others with dignity. What did success mean to me? I thought about 15 years of building Tech Vault. The all-nighters, the failed prototypes, the small victories that built into something larger. I thought about my team, the engineers and designers and project managers who'd trusted me with their careers. I thought about Sarah, trying to destroy something she'd never understood. About Morrison and Meridian, treating my life's work like just another commodity to be bought and sold. Then I thought about legacy, about what happens to things we create after we're gone. The next morning, I called Bradley and declined his offer. You're making a mistake, he said. This opportunity won't come again. Probably not, but Tech Vault isn't for sale. What about partial acquisition? Meridian is still interested in. Tom, let me be very clear. Tech Vault Solutions will never be owned by Meridian Holdings or any subsidiary thereof. That company tried to steal what I built once. They'll never get another chance. 6 months later, Meridian Holdings filed for bankruptcy. Their mysterious acquisition partner turned out to be a shell company backed by leveraged debt. When the deal collapsed, it took Meridian down with it. Their 43% stake in Tech Vault, worthless in bankruptcy court. I bought it back for pennies on the dollar. Now I owned 100% of my company again. Sarah sent a card on the anniversary of our divorce. Just a simple note saying she hoped I was well and that she was proud of what I'd accomplished. No hidden agenda, no request for reconciliation. Just acknowledgement. I kept the card on my desk for a week before throwing it away. Not out of anger, but out of acceptance. She was part of my past now, like college or my first apartment or the used car I'd driven before Tech Vault's first big contract. Important then, irrelevant now. 2 years after the divorce, Tech Vault employed over 300 people across 4 offices. We'd branched into artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and blockchain technology. The company I'd built in my garage had become an industry leader. And I was lonely. Success without someone to share it with really was just expensive loneliness, like my father had said. I dated occasionally, but every relationship felt shallow. How do you trust someone new when the person you trusted most had tried to destroy you? The breakthrough came during a conference in Austin. I was presenting TechVault's new AI platform to a room full of venture capitalists and tech executives, standard stuff I'd done 100 times before. But in the audience, taking notes on an old-fashioned legal pad, was a woman who looked completely out of place. Mid-30s, wearing practical clothes instead of designer labels, more interested in the technology than the business applications. After my presentation, she approached the stage. "That machine learning algorithm you described," she said. "How are you handling data bias in the training sets?" Not the usual question I got from investors. They wanted to know about profit margins and market expansion. She wanted to understand the actual technology. "We use synthetic data augmentation and adversarial training to minimize bias impact," I said. "Are you familiar with AI development?" "I teach computer science at UT, Dr. Elena Rodriguez." She extended her hand. "Your platform could revolutionize how we approach automated threat detection." We talked for 20 minutes about algorithms and neural networks and the ethical implications of artificial intelligence. She was brilliant, passionate about her work, completely unimpressed by my wealth or corporate success. It was the most genuine conversation I'd had in years. "Would you like to get coffee?" I asked as the conference crowd started dispersing. "Can't. I have to get back to campus. Teaching a graduate seminar tonight." "Tomorrow?" She hesitated. "Are you always this persistent with potential customers?" "Only with the interesting ones." That earned me a smile. "Okay, tomorrow. But we're talking about technology, not business." "Deal." Coffee turned into lunch. Lunch turned into dinner. Dinner turned into long walks through downtown Austin, discussing everything from quantum computing to the best BBQ joints in Texas. Elena wasn't impressed by my story of corporate redemption. She wasn't interested in the drama with Sarah or the betrayal or the revenge. She wanted to know how TechVault's algorithms actually worked. She challenged my assumptions, pointed out flaws in my logic, suggested improvements to systems I thought were perfect. For the first time in years, I felt intellectually challenged instead of just professionally successful. We started dating long distance, Austin to Dallas every weekend, alternating who made the drive. She showed me her lab, introduced me to her graduate students, explained research projects that made my commercial applications look simple. I showed her TechVault's development facilities, let her play with prototypes before they hit the market, valued her input more than any consultant I'd ever hired. 6 months later, she moved to Dallas to take a position at SMU. 6 months after that, I proposed. "You sure you want to marry someone in tech?" I asked as we walked through the botanical gardens where we'd had our first Dallas date. "I know how that worked out last time." "I'm not Sarah," Elena said simply. "I don't want your company. I have my own career. I just want you." The wedding was small. Elena's family from Mexico, my father, a handful of friends from work. No corporate networking, no social climbing, no hidden agendas. Just two people who'd found something worth protecting. Sarah sent flowers. The card read, "Congratulations, she seems perfect for you." She was right. Elena understood the difference between a business partnership and a marriage. She never asked about TechVault's finances, never suggested how I should run the company, never treated my success as something she was entitled to share. But she was genuinely excited when we landed a major government contract. She celebrated when Forbes named TechVault one of the fastest growing tech companies in the country. She mourned with me when we had to lay off 30 employees during an economic downturn. She was a partner, not a passenger. 3 years into our marriage, Elena got pregnant. We bought a house in Preston Hollow, close enough to both our offices but with good schools and quiet streets. A place to raise a family. My daughter was born on a Tuesday in March, during a thunderstorm that knocked out power to half of Dallas. Elena had been in labor for 14 hours. I'd been pacing the hospital corridors, calling the office every 20 minutes until Elena's mother finally took my phone away. "Your company will survive without you for 1 day," she said in accented English. "Your wife needs you here." When the nurse placed my daughter in my arms, still red-faced and screaming, I understood something I'd never grasped during all those years building TechVault. Success wasn't about surviving betrayal or achieving financial independence or proving you could overcome anything. Success was about creating something meaningful enough to outlast your own life. TechVault would continue after I was gone. Elena's research would advance the field long after she retired. But our daughter, she was the future we'd built together. She was legacy in its purest form. I called her Sophia, after Elena's grandmother. That night, sitting in the hospital room while Elena slept and Sophia dozed against my chest, I thought about the path that had led me here, the betrayal that had nearly destroyed me, the revenge that had saved my company, the loneliness that had taught me the value of genuine partnership. All of it had been necessary. Every betrayal, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. Without Sarah's affair, I never would have protected TechVault. Without protecting TechVault, I never would have had the confidence to rebuild my personal life. Without rebuilding my personal life, I never would have met Elena. The woman who tried to destroy me had inadvertently led me to the woman who completed me. 6 months later, Bridgepoint Ventures made its final acquisition. Not another tech company or a corporate buyout, but a scholarship fund at Elena's former university. Full rides for first-generation college students pursuing computer science degrees. The announcement barely made the local news. No fanfare, no press releases, no board meetings. Just a quiet transfer of funds to help students who reminded me of myself 20 years earlier, brilliant, hungry, and willing to work harder than anyone thought possible. Sarah called when she saw the announcement in the business section. "That's beautiful," she said. "Sophia will be proud of her father." "How did you know about Sophia?" "Elena posts pictures on Instagram. She's beautiful, looks just like you." It was strange, having this normal conversation with someone who'd once been my greatest enemy. Time had healed what apologies couldn't. Distance had provided perspective that proximity had made impossible. "I'm glad you're happy," Sarah continued. "I mean that. I know I don't have the right to care anymore, but I'm glad you found what you were looking for." "Are you happy, I mean?" "Getting there. Therapy helps. David and I are getting married in the fall." David, the yoga instructor who'd helped end my first marriage, now he was going to become Sarah's second husband. The irony was too perfect to be angry about. "Congratulations," I said, and meant it. "Thank you for everything, for letting me be part of TechVault's early days, for not fighting harder during the divorce, for not destroying me when you could have. We destroyed each other plenty, but we survived it." "Yes, we did." After we hung up, I sat in my home office, looking at family photos on the desk where corporate reports used to live. Sophia's first smile, Elena receiving a research grant. The three of us at the zoo last weekend. TechVault's latest quarterly report sat unopened in my inbox. The company ran itself now, guided by the team I'd spent years building and the systems Elena had helped me refine. I still went to the office, still made strategic decisions, still loved the work. But it wasn't my whole life anymore. Success, I'd learned, wasn't about winning or losing or getting revenge on people who'd wronged you. Success was about building something strong enough to support the weight of real happiness. Sophia started crying from her nursery upstairs. Elena was at the university, teaching her evening seminar, dad duty. I closed my laptop and headed upstairs, leaving TechVault's problems for tomorrow. Tonight belonged to my family. Tonight belonged to the life I'd built on the ashes of the life I'd lost. My daughter quieted the moment I picked her up, as if she'd just been waiting for someone to remind her she wasn't alone. Her eyes were Elena's eyes, bright and curious and completely trusting. "Want to hear a story?" I whispered as I settled into the rocking chair by her window. Outside, Dallas sparkled in the darkness, full of ambition and dreams and people fighting their own battles. Once upon a time, there was a man who thought he'd lost everything. He thought his life was over, his dreams were ruined, his future was gone. But he was wrong. Sometimes losing everything is just another way of saying you're free to build something better. Sophia gurgled and grabbed my finger with her tiny hand. "The end," I whispered. But it wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a different story, a better story, a story worth telling.